Morning, yes friends. In the last class, we have discussed chapter 4, theory of firm under perfect competition market. We have discussed in the last class. Okay, in this class, we are going to discuss chapter 5th, market equilibrium. Chapter 5th is market equilibrium. We know that in the microeconomics, we have discussed 4 chapters. Introduction to microeconomics, then theory of consumer behavior, second chapter, and third chapter is production and cost, then fourth theory of firm under perfect competition, then fifth chapter is market equilibrium. Okay, see, in the second chapter we have discussed that is theory of firm under perfect competition, and fourth chapter is second chapter is theory of consumer behavior. Theory of consumer behavior. Theory of consumer behavior. Fourth chapter is theory of firm under perfect competition. We have discussed in the last classes. Okay, in this chapter we will club fourth chapter as well as second chapter. ಎರಡನ್ನೂ ನಾವು ಮಿಕ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. In the second chapter of theory of consumer behavior, what we have discussed, individual demand curve. What tells individual demand curve? The quantity of consumer is willing to buy and is able to purchase at a particular price. We have discussed individual demand curve. Then market demand curve. Market demand curve, the sum of individual demand curve called as market demand curve, we have discussed in the second chapter. That is the what theory of consumer behavior we have discussed in the second chapter. See, in the fourth chapter we have discussed the concept about supply curve. Supply, individual supply curve, the firm, their consumer, yeah, firm. See, consumer they will express the demand. See, second, fourth chapter, firm. See, the fourth chapter what we have discussed in the last classes. See, that is individual supply curve. The firm is going to produce the different types of quantities or commodities at a specific prices. We have discussed individual supply curve and market supply curve. That is the horizontal summation of what individual supply curve is called as market supply curve. We have discussed in the last class. See, the firm is expresses what supply. Okay, we have discussed the second chapter as well as fourth chapter. See, firm is going to do a thing, the supply of goods and services in the economy. See, the consumer is expressor, his demand is going to prefer the good, is going to buy a goods and services at a specific prices. See, this is the in this chapter we combine both consumers and firms behavior to study the market equilibrium. To study the market equilibrium through the demand and supply. Demand and supply analysis. Demand and supply. See, demand and supply. Now, how we are going to discuss the market equilibrium through the demand and supply. Demand and supply ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಕರಿತೀವಿ ಅಂತಕ್ಕಂಥ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ದ ಅನಾಲಿಸಿಸ್ ಡಿಮ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಮಾರ್ಕೆಟ್ ಈಕ್ವಿಲಿಬ್ರಿಯಂ through the demand and supply analysis we determine the what price equilibrium should be attained ಅಂತೇಳಿ ನಾವು ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಓಕೆ, ಆಲ್ಸೋ ಎಕ್ಸಾಮೈನ್ in this chapter we also examine the effects of demand and supply shift on equilibrium. ಡಿಮ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಮತ್ತು ಅದು ಶಿಫ್ಟ್ ಕೂಡ ಡಿಮ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಸಪ್ಲೈ ಶಿಫ್ಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ಸೈಮಲ್ಟೇನಿಯಸ್ ಶಿಫ್ಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಅವೆಲ್ಲ ಆ ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟನ್ನು ನಾವು ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವೇನು ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಏನೇನು ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಫಸ್ಟ್ ನಾವು ಈ ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್ಲಿ. ಈಗ ನೋಡೋಣ, ದಿಸ್ ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್ ಈಕ್ವಿಲಿಬ್ರಿಯಂ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್. ಈಕ್ವಿಲಿಬ್ರಿಯಂ ಅಂದರೆ ವಾಟ್ ಯು ಮೀನ್ ಬೈ ಈಕ್ವಿಲಿಬ್ರಿಯಂ? ಈಕ್ವಿಲಿಬ್ರಿಯಂ ಮೀನ್ಸ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಏನು? Then what do you mean by excess demand? Excess demand ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು? Excess demand. Then what do you mean by excess supply? Excess supply. We are going to discuss the concept in this class. Okay. First, we have to know what do you mean by equilibrium. What do you mean by equilibrium price? What do you mean by equilibrium quantity? What do you mean by excess demand? And what do you mean by excess supply? We are going to discuss these concepts in this class. Okay. See, a perfectly we know that in your microeconomics we have to discuss around the 5 markets: perfect competitive market, monopoly market, monopolistic market, oligopoly and duopoly. See, we know that in the perfect competition market, they are the price takers. They are the price takers. All other than the markets are called what? Price makers. Other markets. Only perfect competition market should be the price taker. Other than the perfect competition markets are the price makers. Price maker. A perfectly competitive market consists of what? Buyers and sellers. Buyers and sellers who are driven their self-interested objectives. They have specific objectives. That is buyers as well as the sellers. They have a specific objectives, specific intention, aims should be have. Recall from the chapters 2nd and 4th. That is what chapter 2nd is theory of consumer behavior. Chapter 4 theory of firm under perfect competition. What we have discussed. See, 2nd and 4th chapters what we have discussed. 4th objectives. For 2nd chapter objectives and 4th chapter objectives. See, the consumers. The 2nd chapter what we have discussed. What is their main objective? Consumers. Consumers are to maximize their respective preferences. Maximize. Right? What is the main goals? What are the main objectives of the consumers? They have to maximize their respective preferences with the less price. ಏನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು? We have to buy as much as possible more goods on a less price. The consumer is going to purchase. ಅಂದರೆ ಅವ್ರು ಏನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು? ಆದಷ್ಟು ಲೋಯೆಸ್ಟ್ ಪ್ರೈಸಲ್ಲಿ they have to buy maximum quantity of goods. Their main intention ಯಾರ್ದು? ಕನ್ಸ್ಯೂಮರ್ಸ್ನ ಒಂದು main intention ಏನು? ಲೆಸ್ ಪ್ರೈಸಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು? We have to purchase maximum quantity of goods and services. Their main intention, their main objectives. Otherwise, the firms, what are the main objectives of the firms? Firms are to maximize their respective profits. We know that every producer or every firm, their main intention is we have to earn a maximum revenue. We have to earn maximum revenue. Then only we can achieve in the economy. They are thinking, they are their objectives, their principles. Okay, see, both the consumers and buyers, both the consumers and sellers are firms. Both the consumers and firms objectives are compatible in the equilibrium. ಅಂದರೆ ಈ ಒಂದು equilibrium ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇಬ್ಬರು ಕೂಡ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ. Equilibrium ಅಲ್ಲಿ both consumers as well as firms are both the compatible in the equilibrium. ಅಂದರೆ ಒಂದು ಅವರೇ ಕಾಂಪಿಟೇಟರ್ಸ್ ಈ equilibrium ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ. Okay, see, we have to know what do you mean by equilibrium. What do you mean by equilibrium? ಅಂದರೆ an equilibrium is defined as a situation where the plans of all consumers and firms. See, an equilibrium is defined as a situation where the plans of all consumers and firms in the market match and the market clears. Right? Ready? See, that is an equilibrium is defined as a situation where the plans of all consumers and firms, where the plans of all consumers and firms in the market match and market clears. See, now meaning specific meaning equilibrium antandre, see, equilibrium means the aggregate quantity that the aggregate quantity, equilibrium antandre ಏನು, in equilibrium that the aggregate quantity, equilibrium andre ಏನು ಹೇಳಿ, the aggregate quantity that all firms wish to sell equals the quantity that all the consumers in the market wish to buy. In other words, market demand is equal to market supply, is called as equilibrium point or equilibrium. Equilibrium andre ಏನು ಹೇಳಿ, equilibrium, the aggregate quantity that all the firms wish to sell equals the quantity that all the consumers in the market wish to buy. Is called as equilibrium. In other words, our market demand is equal to market supply. Market demand is equals market supply, is called as equilibrium. Equilibrium andre gottaydalla, the aggregate quantity that all the firms wish to sell equals the quantity that all the consumers wish to buy, is called as equilibrium. In other words, market demand, see, market demand equals market supply. Market demand is equal to market supply. Market supply is called as what? Equilibrium point or equilibrium. Gottaydalla, an equilibrium means the aggregate quantity that all firms wish to sell equals the quantity that all the consumers wish to buy, is called as equilibrium. And in other words, market demand is equal to market supply, is called as equilibrium. Okay, that is, we have to know what you mean by equilibrium price. What do you mean by equilibrium price? See, the price at which equilibrium is reached, the price at which equilibrium is reached is called as equilibrium price. The price at which equilibrium reached andre alli ಏನಾಗಿರುತ್ತಪ್ಪ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, for example, this is the how can we consider the equilibrium price? See, this is the demand curve, this is the supply curve. See, this is, we know, the equilibrium point. This is DD, demand curve. This is SS, supply curve. This is the quantity. This is price. This is the what? Equilibrium price. This is the where the what? The supply curve, where the supply curve and demand curve is intersect, that is point equilibrium point. This is the equilibrium price. Equilibrium price. Okay. The price at which equilibrium is reached. Right? This is the point where equilibrium reached. This is called as equilibrium price. The price at which equilibrium is reached at this price is called as equilibrium price. Equilibrium price. Then we have to know what you mean by equilibrium quantity. What do you mean by equilibrium quantity? We have discussed what do you mean by equilibrium. Then we have discussed equilibrium price. Then we have to know what do you mean by equilibrium quantity. Equilibrium quantity means quantity. The equilibrium quantity is bought and sold. The equilibrium quantity means quantity bought and sold at this price as equilibrium quantity. The equilibrium quantity means the equilibrium quantity is bought and sold at this price is called as equilibrium quantity. See, and the price of P, the equilibrium quantity bought and sold is called as equilibrium quantity. Equilibrium quantity and the equilibrium quantity means the quantity bought and sold at this price is called as equilibrium quantity. Therefore, PQ is an equilibrium. See, QD is equal to, see, QD P is equal to QSP. What do you mean that? See, QD means quantity demand or market demand. See, QD, market demand or quantity demand, market demand. Here QS, market supply. QD means market demand, QS means market supply. See, here P denotes what? Both the QD and QS, they have P. What do you mean by P? P denotes equilibrium price. P denotes equilibrium price. And QDP and QD denotes market demand and market supply of the commodity, respective price at the P, respectively at the price P. Okay na? See, QD means the quantity demand or market demand. QS means quantity supply or market supply. P denotes equilibrium price. Okay na? Okay, that is QD is equal to QS. See, that market demand is equal to market supply. That should be called as equilibrium. Market demand is called as market supply. Market demand is equal to market supply. See, QD means quantity demand or nothing but market demand. P means equilibrium price is equal to QS, quantity supply or nothing but market supply. Market demand is equal to market supply. Okay. We have to know what do you mean by excess demand and excess supply. Today, 2 marks differentiate between what are the difference between excess demand and excess supply. Excess demand and excess supply. What difference anta keltare. Okay, see, excess demand and excess supply. Excess demand, excess supply. Excess demand and excess supply. Excess demand and excess supply. See, first we have to know what do you mean by excess demand. But a price see, excess demand ಅಂದ್ರೆ market demand is more than market supply. Market demand is more than market supply is called as excess demand. Market demand is more than market supply at that price is called as excess demand. Then excess supply and see, market demand is more than market supply is called as excess demand. Excess supply means what? For the price, market supply is greater than or more than market supply is greater than market demand. We say that there is an excess supply. Market supply, particular price, market supply is greater than market demand. We say that there is an excess supply in the market at that price ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಕರೀತೀವಿ. Market supply is what? Is greater than market demand. We say that there is an excess supply in the market at that price ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಕರೀತೀವಿ. Then if the market demand exceeds or if the market demand greater than market supply at a price, that is what we call it as excess demand. ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತಲ್ಲ? excess demand ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ excess demand is more than excess supply, that is called as excess demand. Excess supply ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ excess supply is greater than, see, market supply is greater than market demand. Market supply is greater than market demand, that is called as excess supply. Excess demand and market demand is greater than market supply is called as what? Excess demand and excess supply. ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತಲ್ಲ? excess demand and excess supply ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು? excess demand ಅಂದ್ರೆ market demand is more than market supply. At that price there is a excess demand. Excess supply means market supply is more than market demand. There is a excess supply. Understood that? This is, see, therefore equilibrium in a perfect competitive market ali can be defined as alternatively zero excess demand and zero excess supply situation. Really ಏನಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ equilibrium ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗಿರುತ್ತಪ್ಪ ಅಂತ, that is the zero excess demand and zero excess supply in the equilibrium point. ಅಂದರೆ excess demand ಆಗಿರಲ್ಲ, excess supply ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ, ಅಂದರೆ equilibrium ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ, zero ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. Zero excess demand and zero excess supply ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಓಕೆ, the market is not equilibrium, ಅದನ್ನು ನಾವು equilibrium ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಬರಲ್ಲ. That is market is not in equilibrium. ಅಂದರೆ whenever the market supply is not equal to the, ಯಾವಾಗಲೂ not equilibrium, whenever the market supply is not equal to the market demand, means the market is not in equilibrium. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ there will be tendency for the price to change. ಅವಾಗ ಏನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ನಾವು? ಪ್ರೈಸನ್ನು ಮೂವ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ಚೇಂಜಸನ್ನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. then only it will be the what to consider as a equilibrium. Okay, the next two sections we will try to understand the remaining concepts. So okay, we have to discuss another concept that is invisible hand. Invisible hand. See, we know that the Adam Smith, who is the Adam Smith? He is the father of economics. His famous book, we know that An Enquiry into the Nature and Causes of Wealth of Nation. An Enquiry into the Nature and Causes of Wealth of Nation. Who wrote that book? Adam Smith. Adam Smith wrote the book. Which one? An Enquiry into the Nature and Causes of Wealth of Nation. In 1776. In 1776, we know that. See, he has given the concept of invisible hand. From the time of Adam Smith, has been maintaining that perfectly competitive market. There will be market on invisible hand is at play. It changes the price whenever there is an imbalance in the market. The perfect competition market, there will be that is a imbalance in the market. The invisible hand will come and changes in the prices. See, that is our institution also tells us invisible hand should raise the prices in case of excess demand. See, the invisible hand should be the raises the prices in the case of excess demand and lower the prices in the case of excess supply. ನೋಡಿ, excess demand ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ? ಪ್ರೈಸ್ನ ರೈಸ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ ಯಾವುದು? ಇನ್ವಿಸಿಬಲ್ ಹ್ಯಾಂಡ್. ದೆನ್ ಎಕ್ಸೆಸ್ ಸಪ್ಲೈ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ? ಪ್ರೈಸನ್ನು ಡಿಕ್ರೀಸ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ ಯಾವುದು? ಇನ್ವಿಸಿಬಲ್ ಹ್ಯಾಂಡ್. ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತಲ್ಲ? our intuition what also tells that this invisible hand should raise the prices in case of excess demand and lower the prices in case of excess supply. ಯಾವುದು? invisible hand should be raise the price in case of excess demand, then and same thing invisible hand should decrease the price in case of excess supply. Okay, that's why what throughout our analysis we shall maintain that what the invisible hand plays a very important role. Moreover, we shall take that the invisible hand by following this process is able to reach the equilibrium. With the help of the invisible hand, the market should be equilibrium. This assumption will be taken with all that we discuss in this text. Again, given the concept of invisible hand, Professor Adam Smith given the concept about the invisible hand. See, the invisible hand should raise the prices in case of excess demand. Same time, invisible hand should be decrease the price of in case of excess supply. We know that ಈಗ excess demand ಇದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು price is decreased. ಆ ಟೈಮಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ? ಪ್ರೈಸ್ ಅನ್ನು ಇನ್ಕ್ರೀಸ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ. ಯಾವುದೋ ಈ invisible hand. ಅದೇ ರೀತಿ excess supply ಇದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಪ್ರೈಸ್ should be the above. ಆ ಟೈಮಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ? ಪ್ರೈಸ್ ಅನ್ನು ಡಿಕ್ರೀಸ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಎನಿ imbalance took place in the economy, then invisible hand will come and clear the situations. This is the concept given by Adam Smith. Okay, in the next class we have to discuss the concept market equilibrium with the fixed number of firms. Market equilibrium with fixed number of firms. Okay, in this class we have discussed what do you mean by equilibrium, what do you mean by equilibrium price, and what do you mean by equilibrium quantity, then what do you mean by excess demand and excess supply, then invisible hand, what is the role of invisible hand in the economy. All the concept we have discussed in this class. In the next class we are going to discuss the concept is market equilibrium, fixed market equilibrium, the fixed number of firms. Okay, thank you.